Greetings, I am Amelia. Today, I wish to recount an event that transpired long ago. It may be the first time I have the courage to share this, as this story helped shape me. The narrative commences at the age of 25. I was years old when I entered into marriage with my current husband, Oliver. He is a tall man with an attractive appearance and a mature demeanor, characterized by deep blue eyes, neat brown hair, and a charming smile that is unforgettable to those who meet him. A mutual friend introduced us. Initially, I had low expectations for matchmaking, believing that love should develop organically. However, from our first encounter, Oliver made a significant impression on me. He was not only elegant, but also exceptionally polite and considerate. Our conversation was natural, like we had known each other previously. From that moment, I sensed the warmth I had been seeking. Subsequent to a term of acquaintance, we resolved to marry. The wedding was simple but filled with joy and contentment. I recall that day well. I donned a pristine white bridal gown, grasping Oliver's hand as we proceeded down the aisle, accompanied by the blessings of family and friends. Our vows echoed before all, and I was convinced that I had discovered a partner who would safeguard and nurture me eternally. Our wedding resembled a delightful dream. Oliver was a dedicated husband, consistently attentive to my needs while managing his professional responsibilities. Despite his demanding schedule as a director of a home supplies company, Oliver consistently made time to dine with me or engage in conversation after a long day. I considered myself fortunate, as I possessed both a devoted husband and a nurturing home. Our early married life resembled an idyllic dream. Oliver was a compassionate, accomplished, and devoted spouse. He served as the director of a company focused on the manufacturing of home supplies, a coveted position attained through relentless dedication. However, his professional commitments left him with minimal time for his family. Oliver's routine commenced at 6 a.m. each day. Upon departing for work, he returned home just at 9 p.m. every night. Occasionally later, due to prolonged meetings or significant projects, Oliver's company was not in proximity to our residence. Despite driving a luxury BMW, it still required him nearly an hour to commute daily. During unexpected business trips, Oliver would be away from home for 1 or 2 days, leaving me feeling empty and missing him profoundly. Dining alone often induced sadness, yet I reassured myself that these sacrifices were for our future. I took comfort in knowing he worked hard for himself and our small family. Initially, everything was satisfactory. Despite his demanding schedule, Oliver consistently endeavored to compensate for his absence during his free time, and we spent evenings together. During supper, watching films, or even conversing about the day's events, our relationship was notably harmonious, and I could distinctly perceive his affection for me through every glance and gesture. I always believed we were an ideal couple and that our relationship would remain unchanged. Nevertheless, as time progressed, the demands of work intensified, leading to Oliver's progressive transformation. He frequently returned home fatigued and drained after an arduous day. Dinner occasionally consisted of brief conversations, and rather than watching films or engaging in dialogue with me as he had previously, he frequently retired early to prepare. Each morning, as I remained awake while he departed for work, his demanding schedule hindered our ability to spend time together. The distance did not manifest solely during meals or chats, but insidiously infiltrated our marital lives over time. Oliver frequently lacked the energy to reply. In response to my yearning for intimacy, there were occasions when I attempted to initiate a dialogue or capture his attention. However, he merely smiled and stated that he required slumber. I recognized his profound exhaustion, However, I could not suppress the feelings of loneliness and emptiness within me, despite my deep affection for him. I started to realize that the affection and care I once craved for a young, vibrant woman like me was no longer fully fulfilled. This emotion developed a profound emptiness. It became increasingly challenging to maintain our relationship. I reassured myself that this was merely a difficult phase in our marriage and that our love would prevail. Yet, I could not ignore the growing distance that was creating rifts between us. At that time, I was a young woman brimming with vitality and youthful desires, while my husband, Oliver, was frequently absent due to his demanding job. We had not been intimate for an extended period, and the empty days passed, leaving me with an indescribable sense of deprivation. Often, I found myself confronting these emotions alone in my room, a means of coping with the void left by Oliver's absence. On that day, like any other, Oliver left for work early while I remained home to manage the household and care for the family. Everything appeared normal, and nothing extraordinary occurred around noon. Upon completing the household chores, I experienced an unsettling sensation igniting within my heart like a smoldering blaze. Oliver had been busy all week and had little time for himself. The absence compelled me to seek an outlet for my emotions. I entered the bedroom, my sanctuary, and commenced to unwind. For some reason, I didn't remember if I had closed the door or maybe I had forgotten in my rush. I let my emotions overwhelm me, disregarding my surroundings. The room was silent. I was wholly absorbed in those emotions, unaware that anyone might observe. Uncertain of the duration that had elapsed, I lifted my gaze and encountered a figure positioned directly before the entrance. My father-in-law, Mr. James, was standing there. I was astonished, rendered speechless. He looked straight at me, his eyes unable to leave the scene in front of him. I became aware that he had been observing me for an extended period, unnoticed by me. I was agitated, attempting to conceal my bewilderment. "Father, what are you doing there?" I inquired of Mr. James, my voice quavering. He appeared to emerge hesitantly, stammering, "Oh, I was merely passing by." But then he said, "Don't worry, I didn't." His statements exacerbated my confusion. I had not inquired, yet he elucidated as though concealing something. The stillness was oppressive, and I sensed the ambiance in the room grow weighty. After that, Mr. James hurriedly left. His departure left me with a pounding heart, unsure of how to handle this situation. The image of him standing at the door persisted throughout the day, and I thought that was it. However, it was not late afternoon. The faint yellow sunshine of sunset illuminated the kitchen, suffusing the area with a pleasant hue. I was preparing dinner as customary. Oliver had not yet returned home. He was, as customary, occupied with his responsibilities at the company. The sounds of knives and chopping boards, along with the aroma of food simmering on the stove, permeated the serene ambiance in the house. I donned a light white tank top and a knee-length skirt, feeling comfy at home. While I concentrated on cooking, I felt a disconcerting sense of someone watching me. Initially, I suspected I might be merely deluding myself. However, that feeling did not go but remained sharper and clearer, as if that stare never left me. My heart squeezed slightly in my fist and stopped moving. I gradually turned my head, and at that instant, my gaze encountered that of James, my father-in-law, who was standing. Positioned directly at the kitchen entrance, his eyes remained fixated on me, unblinking. In that instant, I distinctly perceived a profound astonishment in his gaze, one that was not transient, but rather an unwavering stare. I was momentarily astonished, then spoke, attempting to maintain a steady tone. "Dad, What are you staring at?" Upon hearing my voice, Mr. James appeared startled, as though abruptly awakened from a distant reverie. His complexion flushed slightly, and he stammered, "Ah, no, I was merely contemplating." He then turned and swiftly exited the kitchen, his steps appearing unsteady. I remained there, my heart racing, feeling both perplexed and uneasy. His behavior evoked memories of past events. Ever since he witnessed me in a vulnerable moment, I recognized that every gesture and glance he directed towards me carried an unusual significance. I realized that it wasn't just a dream, as he continued to stare at me for longer than usual. Additionally, I occasionally observed him smiling to himself when his gaze lingered on me. I attempted to rationalize this as a father's concern for his daughter-in-law, yet I could not suppress an escalating sense of discomfort, compounding my unease. His inadvertent actions became increasingly conspicuous when we encountered each other in the narrow hallway. His hand brushed against mine, albeit briefly, yet it was sufficient to startle me. I was uncertain whether these actions were deliberate or inadvertent. However, they rendered me progressively uneasy, as though I were suffocating in my own home. On numerous occasions, I noticed him silently watching me from a distance with an expression I could not distinctly articulate. Uncertain whether it was curiosity, guilt, or another emotion, his presence rendered me progressively uneasy within this place. The memory of James's gaze that afternoon continues to haunt me, leaving me uncertain about how to address this problem or whether to disregard it entirely as if it never occurred. On a pleasant morning, the soft sunlight illuminated the kitchen. Our family was dining together at breakfast. The ambiance of the lunch was characteristically tranquil. The clinking of chopsticks and bowls disrupted the calm towards the conclusion. At the end of the lunch, my husband Oliver looked up at the entire family and announced that he was going on a 4-day business trip. He explained that it was a significant project and he could not decline. I smiled and nodded as customary. However, I was unable to suppress a feeling of loss. The absence of him invariably rendered me vacant, and this instance was no different. Oliver departed the residence immediately following breakfast, as per his routine. I began to clean the table, arranging the dishes in anticipation of washing. Only my father-in-law, James, and I remained in the house. The atmosphere abruptly grew quieter than ever before. I was still focused on my job, but for some reason, I felt a weird warmth from behind Mr. James's two rough, muscular hands, which suddenly grabbed me closely. Taken aback, I dropped the towel I was holding as my heart raced. Before I could respond, Mr. James gently said, his voice hoarse and shaking, "Amelia, may I hold you for a moment?" His words rendered me immobile. My entire body became rigid. I was astounded at what I had just heard. At that moment, I distinctly perceived the turmoil within my heart. I wanted to refuse. I wanted to push him away instantly, but my body seemed to no longer listen to me. I inhaled deeply. I tried to remain calm and said in a gentle voice, "Father, you cannot continue in that manner." I was mistaken, but Mr. James refused to let me go. He tightened his arms around me, his breath caressing my ear. I could feel the tension. He persisted, his voice imbued with an emotion that I could not discern as either remorse or anguish. "Amelia, I acknowledge that this is incorrect. However, I can no longer contain it. I have been holding on to this emotion, even though I know it's incorrect." Feeling both guilt and rage, I tried to break free from his grasp, but he held me close, and then he continued speaking as if he wanted to spill out all the feelings. He had concealed it for an extended period. I cannot erase that image from my mind. I did not intend to observe it. However, I am unable to cease my thoughts of you. I apologize, but I am unable to exercise self-control. Upon hearing these words, I sensed that everything around me was disintegrating. My face flushed, not just from humiliation, but also from rage and anxiety. I tried to shove him away once more, this time with all my effort. Ultimately, Mr. James released his grip on me, and I pivoted to face him, my voice quavering yet imbued with resolve. Father, your actions are incorrect. I cannot accept this. Kindly cease. Mr. James lowered his head, averted his gaze, but then swiftly raised it, his eyes reflecting an unusual resolve. He stepped closer to his voice as if attempting to stifle something. Amelia, I can no longer conceal these emotions. I know this is wrong. Do you comprehend since that moment, since I encountered you, I cannot cease my contemplation. Are you aware of the extent to which this feeling causes me pain? I stepped back, my hands grabbing the edge of the dining table, my pulse beating with rage and dread. Father, this is incorrect. This is our family, you. Despite knowing he shouldn't think this way, he pressed on, stepping forward with an anxious, almost imploring tone. Amelia, just this once. I assure you I won't. Allow this to proceed no farther, just this once. I can no longer contain it. I averted my gaze, attempting to prevent his eyes from faltering. Father, please cease. Kindly cease. We cannot disrupt. Mr. James exhaled, but still he remained resolute. Amelia, the image remains indelible in my memory. I made an effort. I made a concerted effort, although I was unable to succeed. You are the one individual who revitalizes my spirit after years of solitude. You fail to understand that I felt an overwhelming blend of wrath, guilt, and helplessness. I turned to face him directly, my voice resolute. Dad, I cannot do this. I shall never undertake this. This is my family, including my husband. Please stop. Now, before things became irreparable, my comments hit him like a hard blow, leaving him stunned. He gazed at me, his eyes brimming with anguish and disillusionment. After an extended period, he bowed his head, his voice raspy. I apologize, Amelia. I'm unworthy of being your father-in-law. I am uncertain as to why I behaved in that manner. I simply lack self-control. I maintained a steady gaze upon him, striving to remain composed. Despite my heart racing with conflicting feelings, I inhaled deeply and then stated, my voice, quivering yet resolute. I trust you comprehend that this must cease immediately. This concerns my family and me. I would never engage in any actions that would transgress boundaries. Mr. James remained motionless, merely nodding in acknowledgement, before stepping back, his eyes reflecting remorse and exhaustion. He pivoted, lowered his head, and exited the room with a heavy gait. His footsteps reverberated in the hallway. He seemed to be weighed down by a deep sense of shame as he slowly faded away. I stood there, my whole body shaking. I breathed a sigh of relief, but my heart still couldn't calm down. I clenched my fists. Trying to calm myself, I knew that if things went any further, he and I would both cross the unforgivable line. And from that day on, my father-in-law almost disappeared from the daily routine of the house. He rarely went out, often staying in his room, leaving everything as if it had nothing to do with him anymore. Whenever he appeared, it was only for a few short moments when he quietly passed by, not saying a word, not looking at me. The atmosphere in the house became heavy, and his silence was an invisible reminder of what had happened. Oliver was unaware that his father was experiencing a period of sadness or loneliness as he grew older, until one day he noticed that James had lost his enthusiasm for gardening. At dinner, Oliver said to me, "I think Dad is tired or something is wrong. He's not going out as much as he used to, and he's not interested in the things he used to love. Maybe I should take the time to talk to him, but honestly, I don't know where to start. I just nodded, trying to keep my anxiety down so as not to reveal anything suspicious. I believe Father needs some respite, I said, maintaining a gentle tone despite my deep distress. I was aware that Oliver harbored no suspicions, yet his remarks intensified my feelings of guilt. I alone understood the true motive behind James's withdrawal, and it tormented me daily. I frequently pondered whether circumstances would revert to their previous state. I desired to erase all memories, to revert to a state of normalcy as if nothing had happened. But James's gaze during our infrequent home encounters carried an ineffable weight, not hostility, but a profound anguish, as if his own overwhelming guilt had ensnared him. I am uncertain whether to disregard everything or confront everything. To find a way to resolve it either way, I still feel that the distance between me and him, as well as the peace in this family, is getting further and further away. I can only hope that time will help everything fade away. But deep down, I know these wounds will never heal. After all, I realize that the moral boundary is something that should never be crossed under any circumstances. Immediate emotions and moments of weakness can cause irreparable consequences, hurting both myself and those around me. I understand that silence or avoidance is not the way to solve the problem, but only makes things worse. The biggest lesson I learned is that I need to be strong and stand my ground, respect myself, and protect the core values of the family. Through this story, I want to share with everyone an important lesson in life. Always maintain ethical boundaries and personal values. Sometimes immediate emotions or difficult circumstances can make us get carried away, but remember that the consequences of crossing these limits can destroy everything you have. Calmness, steadfastness, and the ability to say no to wrong situations are the ways to protect yourself and your family. I also recommend that comprehension and communication are crucial in familial interactions. Do not hesitate to express your emotions and apprehensions to your loved ones, particularly your spouse, to prevent misunderstandings and unwarranted estrangement. Consistently value your possessions. Do not permit instances of vulnerability to undermine the happiness you have cultivated. My narrative concludes here. If you find this narrative significant and instructive, kindly like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support and for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the upcoming videos.